that's not the whole gospel summed up in one song, I don't know what is. This was the tune. Like I said, I do my research, but if you want to do more, that's fine. I just do my research. But the tune, actually, if you think about it, it's not what we kind of sing more modern. The tune and the origins of this, they think it was a tune that slaves had and that slaves would sing, while working and that sort of stuff. So they think that that's really where it comes from. But the words even have changed. But there's some parts in there you're going to see me talk about that they put in there too. But to heal the wounds, sin sick soul. There's a version that's in the next time I think you historically can find this. It's in a Methodist hymnal, and they even change some of the words, like if you can pray like Paul. But the other one, there's a version somewhere in there that says if you can preach like Peter and pray like Paul. And so there's just some really, it's evolved, and things evolve. But I just thought that was incredible. Now we're going to first start out with just going through the 3 verses where this is referenced, because literally it all comes from 3 verses. First of all, I have to start with, you're sitting there going, why is this quilt blanket up here? Okay. So this is treasure to me. That was trash. And when I say that, sort of, my grandmother would crochet, and she could crochet and talk to you and do this without even seeing what her hands are doing. It was incredible. I mean, she watched her shows, she'd crochet. If she got bored at the bank, she'd crochet. So I go over there to visit her, and I'm probably, college, med school. And I don't know. But she had this started, and she had maybe about this much. And I said, oh, that's beautiful, Granny. And she said, oh, that's my scraps. And so what she would do is take her scraps and just keep them and not throw them away. We didn't waste. And then she would just take it and just crochet the scraps in. And so I said, when you finish, I want it. But not only that, I actually would go into yarn stores and buy different yarns and just take them to her. And she finished in record time. So it went from being a scrap to I'm building it. It's gorgeous. Now the other thing about it is that at some point it got washed in a little hot water, so it was even bigger. But that's okay. Now the thing about this sucker is warm. I will say that if you're saying it's going to be 30 degrees outside and I got to sleep on the ground, I want this. I mean, it's credible because it is so dense and so much of it, and it's a warm blanket. And it'll last, but because I want to protect it too. But it's incredible. But I bring this because we got to get back to the story of Joseph. We're talking in Genesis 37, 25, and 26. But we got to talk about the problem with, Joseph and his family was favoritism. His parents gave Joseph this coat of many colors. And it was, it's not like he's the favorite kid, but look what he drives. He's not the favorite kid, but look what he wears. That was the bad thing, is that they showed favoritism to Joseph. And then Joseph has a gift from God, which may be why they showed him favoritism. I get it, but parents, whatever. It always kind of sticks in my craw when I hear somebody say, "This is my favorite kid." I'm like, I wish you wouldn't say that. You should never say that. They're unique in their own ways, and you love them equally. You don't show favoritism. They have different needs. They have, it's kids are kids. But Joseph had a dream. And so Joseph, as a young man, had this dream and didn't know that he maybe shouldn't tell his brothers the dream, because there's a deal of barley and everybody else is bowing down to it. And the brothers aren't stupid. They can read into that dream and say, this is us, that's you. Pretty clear. So they got jealousy. They got mad. And I didn't get a time to really dig into this, but I believe Reuben was one of the brothers, and Reuben actually may have been kind of like one of the older ones or something, but Reuben really was trying to also protect Joseph for whatever reasons. You know, families are like that. But Reuben is not there at the time, which may be part of the issue too. Reuben had other work or whatever, but the other brothers were alone with Joseph. And so, you know, sometimes you have in families, even though you may have, I've seen this and I've been part of this, you know, you got to get assigned to your little kid and this is yours to watch. And so Reuben may have been Joseph's, I don't know, but Reuben wasn't there. So they decide that they're going to get rid of Joseph, and at first they're going to kill him. And then they throw him into a well that doesn't have water. And then they're eating lunch and saying, well, what are we going to do now? Because they're kind of like, well, we really don't want to kill him, but we just want him out of our life. He's got to be done. Well, they're sitting there, and in the verse, Genesis 37 verse says, as they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, there's your first reference to the word Gilead, their camels loaded down with spices, balm, and myrrh. Doesn't take us long to take that connection and move it to the future, but there it is. So you move forward in Jeremiah 8:20 through 22. It says, the harvest is past, the summer is ended, we are not saved. Now, fascinatingly enough, I recently heard a sermon where the guy was talking about time, and he was talking about time till Christ coming, time till, you know, this exile, time to these things. And it was fascinating because one of the things that they talk about is like seven, like they use weeks. And so when they would use the word weeks, for example, and actually it's in here, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but when Jacob is negotiating with Laban for one of his daughters, it's you're going to work a week. And it wasn't a 7-day, that was 7 years. So the week is a different connotation, and so when we read those passages, it may, but Jeremiah is saying this is supposed to come about. He said God is going to save you, but they couldn't listen to him. But yeah, he said that. So that's part of that. You know, why isn't there? He said, "My people are crushed, and I am crushed." You know, emotionally, he's attached to them, and he's crushed too. He may be the mouthpiece of God, but it's kind of a prayer and kind of a complaint and kind of all those things. I mourn and horror. I can't read my own handwriting. Horror something me. Horror, you know, horror something. And then the next thing is he asks a question. Jeremiah says, "Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why is there no healing for my people?" So Jeremiah asks those three questions. And it's obviously kind of a prayer he's asking to God. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why is there no healing for my people? Or, I'm sorry, for the wounds of my people. Why is there no healing for the wounds of my people? It's even more specific. So we move forward in Jeremiah to Jeremiah 46:11. And there is an instruction that falls in here. It says, "Go up to Gilead and get balm, O virgin daughter of Egypt. But you multiply remedies in vain. There is no healing for you." And so there's the third verse. So let's go back to what is Gilead, and we're going to get into kind of each one of these three. But that's the three verses. This is where this all comes from. This whole, you know, do a whole sermon on 3 verses. So we had Egypt. We had King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, and they fought. And when it was over, Egypt had been defeated just as it was prophesied. And they came through the region called Gilead. And Gilead is on the other side of the Jordan River in the Holy Land, in an area called, kind of get creative here, River Jordan. The other side's called Jordan. Jordan. It's what we would say Jordan today, but it's over the river. And there have been some really interesting things about that river because, like with the Samaritans, they would cross the river past Samaria and then come on the other side. So that side is Gilead. But why is that Oh, another thing about Egypt coming back through there to get, back, our anatomy on Israel is getting much better these days. But why is that? Why was Egypt never was a power again? They had this big battle, and I think it was Carchemish, and Babylon destroyed them. So, where is that area? Well, there are 3 big characters that come in that area, and one of them is that we had Laban and Jacob. That's where they were. The other term that can be used to that area is Midianites. Midian, remember, the whole thing with Moses, and so it's kind of a deal. But there's those guys, and then Elijah, that's the region he came from. So Elijah is also a figure of hope in the Bible. So Elijah was from that zone. Jacob and Laban, and then also it's where Gideon actually fought the Midianites. So all 3 of those historical things are there. What is Gilead, where it is, those sort of deals. So we've got the zone. We know what it is. Now, we've got to talk about what Balm is. Unfortunately, these days, if you hear that song, even if you don't hear it well, you're going to hear there is a balm in Gilead, B-O-M-B, not a balm. B-A-L-M, which I was digging a little and didn't quite get there, but I'm pretty dang sure I know that this is where it comes from. There's a plant that is a balsa wood plant that grows in that region, and it's one of the few regions that it apparently used to grow in the old world and whatever. But and the sap, the resin, had healing properties. But in order to get it, they said you have to, like a modern day of waiting is of making it, you could just get a bunch of pressure and squeeze it out. But what they would do is they would cut leaves, pierce the trunk of this tree, like we did, like you do for maple syrup. But they would pierce it, or they said if it had any wounds, like if it ever got cut, the sap came out, or they said it had pores, it would come out. So that's an important picture for later, but that's how you get the stuff. And balm is a salve, another word, that you use. We had a guy at the ranch that used to take greasewood, and I know what greasewood is, you may not, but I know exactly what it is. I can find that plant. And he would take greasewood and he'd boil it down and then, and then save that. But that was his balm, his healing, his stuff, and he put it on everything. He put it on animals, he put it on you, he put it on himself, he put it on his wife, his kids, everybody. And I thought, so I was a chemistry major. I started looking up, and it has phenol, which is a good antiseptic. Now, however, phenol also can cause cancer, so maybe not such a good deal. But you're doing it once, it's probably okay. But he would use that. So there have been people doing these kind of things, the whole deal. And I'm also going to give you the joke of the day that it fits in with this, because if you know how you treat a bird or a pig, you have to use different things. If you're dealing with the bird, you have to use a tweetment, and if you're going to deal with a pig, you have to use an ointment. But it was a salve that they made this salve from this tree, and that's what they would do. And the things that we also kind of have to go through of the history of Israel, they had God helped take them out, and it was a big process. We know of all the 10 plagues, but a big process to get them out. And to get them out, and the first thing they do is they actually, when Moses is not with them, like little kids, they strayed, and they strayed pretty quickly. They made the golden calf and everything else. But before that time, they were linked with God, and they were close to God, and so there was that kind of communion, to use a word, but they destroyed that. And so that's what you really have to say is probably the definition of what is a sin-sick soul. I love those terms. Now, those terms have been seen in multiple other songs. So sin sick soul was, that sells. I mean, that's just, if you're in advertising, you got a sin sick soul, and now we probably wouldn't use it, but so there's as someone theologian has said, there's a God-sized hole in everybody that only God can fill. We've all got a void. We've got something that we need. We need that filled. So when they talk about, there is a balm in Gilead, it's a spiritual balm. It basically heals that which hurts your soul. That's kind of the deal that's what you're looking for, is a spiritual balm. Now, we can go back even to their history of Israel and say, who does God want us to share this balm with? Who does God want us to share this with? Everybody. They were supposed to be a light to all nations, so we are supposed to share our healing, our balm, with everybody. Now, Israel was supposed to be a light to all nations. Now, the other thing that's quite interesting about this first passage, even in Genesis, is they were a caravan of Ishmaelites. So we shorten that, we get Ishmael. And then we go back and say, well, who was Ishmael? Hagar had a son, and she named him Ishmael, and Hagar was I think the term is concubine or whatever, but wasn't Abraham's wife who had Isaac. I laughed, those two children were born, but, Sarah was hateful and had her cast out, and so she's out in the desert, and she thinks she's going to die, which is probably what was supposed to, going to happen if God didn't intervene. And so she prayed and God intervened. And so Ishmael, his name means the God who hears. So there's even a connection even with that. And remember, when Jacob was running, he ran into the Edomites, which is another term for the Ishmaelites. When he ran into them, how are they going to receive us? Is he going to kill us, or are these people behind us killing us? And Ishmael was the more, what's the term? Ishmael even was more in line with actually protecting Jacob. He said, yes, we got our differences, but you're still my brother. And so the Edomites, even though there's always tensions and that sort of stuff with those people, there's tensions today because we draw from that line the Israelites, Jacob, Ishmaelites, Islam. And so that's where that is, but they're both sons of Abraham. And even their language is incredible of how close some of it is. For example, they're both read from right to left. Arabic, you see these characters, you read it that way. Hebrew, you read it that way. When they say the word peace, which is more than just the word peace, but peace is a greeting, but it's like aloha. Peace is a greeting, peace is when you're leaving. But there's only a little difference to the ear. For the Hebrew, it's shalom. For the Ishmaelite, it's salam. They're brothers. They won't admit it. Well, they actually will, but they maybe don't like it. I don't know. But that's the whole thing, is these were Ishmaelites. So the Israelites sold Jacob to the Ishmaelites to take into, And then we know the story of Joseph, because he goes into captivity. He's locked in the jails, and the king starts having dreams, and nobody can interpret them. And they dig Jacob out of the jail and Joseph out of the jail, and they say, maybe this guy can interpret your dreams, and he does a very good job. And the king is enamored with this young man who's got this divine wisdom, smart guy. The king's a smart guy. And so he becomes like the guy who's in charge of the storehouses for their future preparation, because this guy, kind of has skills. And so that's how we get that. So you remember Joseph is now I don't know if he was the number 2 man for the king, but he was way up there. And so Joseph, who should have, hated his brothers, could have easily turned on them. He did play some games with them, but he said, what you meant for harm, God meant for good. That's basically a paraphrase. And so he's in charge. The brothers come. He gives them food, but he keeps one of the brothers, keeps the baby brother. he does kind of the same thing they did to him, because the brothers came back to their father and didn't have Joseph, but they had his jacket, and they killed a lamb or a goat, and they put blood on it, and they probably maybe ripped it and made it look like something had killed Joseph. So they lied to their father and said, Joseph's dead. And Joseph mourns, but he thinks Joseph's dead. He didn't know that Joseph's in Egypt. So Joseph sends them back, but keeps the little brother. In other words, okay, y'all kept me separated. Now I'm going to keep him separated. Y'all are going back without him. Now Abraham, in all honesty, probably, he finds that baby brother's in the hands of the Egyptians. He may be thinking, this baby isn't coming back. They're not our friends over there in Egypt. And so Joseph may have thrown him in the dungeons. We don't know, But basically Joseph says, you got to bring your dad. And so he tells them, they're all afraid, but they follow instructions, and he loaded them down with food, and he did here, go. And so there's that whole scenario of that basically it was done in evil, but it was Joseph redeeming them, redemption for them. So there, you got to get, then there's some verses that we've got to get to. And so one of the things that I've got a table here that I'm going to work a little bit about, but I don't, and this is something that I made many connections before seminary, so I don't think that it's anything that's, this is not radical way out there stuff. This is pretty easy to make these connections. But there are definitely connections between Joseph and Jesus. You just can't get away from it. Because there's a verse that is later in the Bible, and it says, out of Egypt I called my son. So who was called out of Egypt? Joseph clearly was one. Joseph went to Egypt, out of Egypt. Now Jesus, and you say, well, but Jesus wasn't from Egypt. But when King Herod started killing the babies, where did the other Joseph take his Jesus? To Egypt. So he came out of Egypt. So they both did. Both of their saviors came out of Egypt. Out of Egypt I called my. So there's a parallel here, though, is this caravan from the Ishmaelites were coming from Gilead, but where were they going? Egypt. The road goes right through there, and they were traveling back and forth, and so it's still, there's a connection there with Egypt, even in that Genesis passage of what happens. They were both shepherds. Joseph was a shepherd boy. That's what they would do. That's why they said the blood from the animal, they just took one of the animals, killed it, and put blood on it and said Joseph's dead. Now, Jesus wasn't literally a shepherd. He's a carpenter's kid, but he's a shepherd of us. A shepherd of my people. There's multiple references to that. Both Joseph and Jesus were rejected and abused by those he loved. Obviously, Joseph's brothers, beat him, threw him in the well. Jesus goes into Jerusalem for Passover, and they have a parade, and they take palm branches and they lay them down, and they take their cloaks and they lay them down. And the donkey that Jesus enters the city on is walked over cloaks and palm branches. Beautiful imagery. However, when it came to crucifixion, did anybody speak for Jesus? No. There was not a single person they said, give us Barabbas, crucify Jesus. The same crowd that 3 days before said, he's our guy, we're saying, oh, no, let's take that guy. Isn't it amazing how fast they turn on it? But Jesus and Joseph both experienced that. Jesus' best friend, the one they talk about in the song, Peter, denied him 3 times. Oh, I don't know who that guy. Oh, no, I'm not with him. No. My accent is not from there. My accent's different. I don't do that accent. They were both wrongly accused. Joseph had done nothing wrong. He told his dream. If he had better discretion and wisdom, but he's a boy. So he gets this dream and he talks about it. And he's not really saying it in terms of, I'm all that, I don't think. Because I'm not sure he could really interpret what he's talking about with the sheaves and everything. I think the older brothers interpreted that. You're saying you're going to be over us and we're going to bow to you. And then the other thing with this is that the funny part, even in the first Genesis, is that, they're the Ishmaelites, the God who hears. God who hears Joseph also hears us and gives us Jesus. And so there's a similarity there. So we've got that as well. The other thing I think is kind of funny, that apparently the balm is sorry, if you look at the Hebrew word for it. But we have an interesting also connection with that word in our modern language. Apparently the stuff is fragrant, obviously. Apparently it's good stuff. It's not easy to get, harder for them because, we had to kind of work to get it. It was one of the gifts that Sheba gave to David. Fascinating. It's also, and I started trying to look at this and I couldn't find a definite link, but there's got to be a link. We have a word in our language that's called embalming. The balm, because this substance that the balm in Gilead that they were talking about from this tree that they get it, this balsam tree, it's in the word, and they used it for bodies. They would take bodies and they would put it on there because it kept the bodies from stinking as bad. And so they would embalm. Now, that tradition goes all the way back. The Egyptians did that with pharaohs. I mean, we get some of our best archaeology from opening these dry pyramid tombs, MRIing these bodies and CTing them and getting a look at what they, we find out what they ate sometimes. We get all kinds of cool information from the past. But embalming, I think, really does come from back there, that kind of thing. But there's a balm, and it's associated with death, too. And the other thing is that, Jesus came because the Satan seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. And so that's nothing of Jesus' mission. He didn't come to do any of those. Okay. I am gonna let's see if you can, before I do this last one, the choir one, did you find it? Okay. That's fine. I want to let you hear more modern or a different version. As they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels loaded down with spices, balm, and myrrh. The harvest is past, the summer is end, we have not been saved since. My people are crushed and I am crushed. I mourn and have horror. Basic horror haunts me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Is there no healing for the wounds of my people? Go up to Gilead and get balm, O virgin daughter of Egypt. But you multiply remedies in vain. There is no healing for you. So I think the thing that would go with that last verse that probably we need to kind of look at is that, as I talked about the God-sized hole, people are searching for God. But they try in ways that just don't satisfy, that don't meet it. They're looking in all the wrong places, as they said. And so there is a balm in Gilead. Now, there's a theologian, if I can find my place again, because remember, this goes back to the three questions. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why is there no healing for the wounds of my people? So there is a Howard Thurman. He's an African-American theologian who lived 1899 to 1981. So in my first years of college is when he died. But that was his life. And he says about this song, the slave caught the mood of the spiritual dilemma and with it did an amazing thing. He straightened the question mark in Jeremiah's sentence into an exclamation point. There is a balm in Gilead. There is a balm in Gilead. Not, is there a balm in Gilead? Is there a physician? Is there? They sang it to say there is a balm in Gilead. Now, I went a little off of his words, but I just had to. There is a balm in Gilead. Exclamation point. Here is the note of creative triumph. And he does a great job with words here too, but creative, saying that question mark got turned into an exclamation point, and it's not a question anymore. There is a balm in Gilead. Here's the note of creative triumph. Jesus betrayed by Judas, betrayed by those around him. I mean, Peter cuts a guy's ear off, but that's was not the plan, so Jesus puts it back on and fixes it. I guess you'd call that a physician. Didn't use sutures or dermabond, he just put it back on. That's not a physician, I don't know what is. He was pierced, just like the tree that makes the balm in Gilead. His blood probably did have medicinal pressure. I wouldn't debate that at all. I bet people that touch Jesus' blood, and we talk about his blood. We talk about we're washed in the blood that saves us. The blood is a balm, just like the balm in Gilead. He was embalmed. He was embalmed with many of the same things that are in Genesis that the caravan's carrying to Egypt. We see the word myrrh. They brought the wise men brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Frankincense and myrrh are spices. So the balm in Gilead may have been put on Jesus' body too. Just saying, kind of make it smell better. He's redemptive. There's a balm in Gilead and there's a physician, and we can heal their wounds. He can redeem us. He is risen. Just because we wrapped up the body and then put it in a tomb doesn't mean that. And I don't know, in some ways, certainly you catch me in a different mood and I can have two different things to say about the Shroud of Turin. On one side I'll be negative and say, what are the odds? It's probably silly. Somebody made this, no telling how it happened. I don't know. It's like the people that look at something and find Jesus behind a rock and you're like, that's not really Jesus. But or the other side of it says, but what if it was? What if it was put on him and they have this kind of face thing and you're sitting there and you're going, even in death, Jesus probably radiated energy. I don't know. So there's part of me says maybe the cloth was changed and maybe it was I don't know. your own mystery. So he is risen. Now the next question is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do when? We had a youth retreat that there was a song at the time, and I'm going to play a new song, but there was a song at the time, and there are multiple versions of this. I Stand Amazed in the Presence is one of them, and I don't even remember the one that was that day. But basically, it was like you stand, and we were having a discussion with the youth workers after that as we're walking back from where the music was, and one of them said, I don't think I'm going to be able to stand. I think I'm going to fall down in the presence of Jesus. And so just me being the counterpoint, I said, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But maybe I'm going to stand there like a little kid and just look at the glory of God. I don't know if I'm going to be down or up. I don't know. But we talked about that. What are you going to do? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do next week? And what are you going to do when it happens? And I'm going to sit there and say, I may do both. I don't know. I really have no idea. And that's where we get this song as we do communion.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine.
This song was written after the artist's father died. And so the walk by your side could have two meanings. Could be he's talking about walking with God. Could be talking about walking with his father. But there's a Genesis reference there. You know, in the cool of the evening, it says they walked with God. The cool of the evening. He wants to say, see your face. You know, no man has ever seen God's face, lest they die. Moses got to see his backside, and he glowed. But he says, standing in the sun. You know, in heaven, there's no need for day or night or light because glory's God illuminates the whole place. And so it says, surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I, you know. And then the other thing that he gets into is forever worship you. And some of you may or may not know, but I've been working on learning to play the bagpipes for a couple of years. And I ran across something that you will get to see at some sermon. It's coming. I'm just telling you. It's coming. Just telling you, it's coming. Whether I play and then we watch it or whatever, but it's coming because and I don't even know the right term yet. I need to dig into that. But they have something that's spelled like tattoo, but I don't know if it's tattoo or how they pronounce it. But every so often they have these conventions where the bagpipes all come together. And it's like a big competition, a world festival where they compete and everything else. And you may hate and you may love bagpipes. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But at this deal in Berlin, they actually got a singer who's incredible. And he sang Amazing Grace. And then 200, let's get into 200. A bagpipe, the only thing that's louder in a bagpipe parade is a fire truck. Because a fire truck hits about 130 decibels. A bagpipe hits about 100 to maybe 110 if you got a band. So this guy is singing, but obviously he's got earplugs in. I guarantee you, the band has earplugs in. When we practice, we put earplugs in because it's that loud. You know, we'd all lose our hearing. But they played, and so he sang Amazing Grace. And then one of the pipers played by himself, which is actually important for two reasons. One is he's taking that whole group, and now they're figuring out the pace because they're not doing it with drums. Drums pipers use so that way they know what the pace is. And so with this, they can pick the pace based off what the guy's playing. And so he plays a verse, and then they all start playing. And bagpipes, you're going to learn a little lesson about bagpipes, but they're incredible. But they only have 8 notes. There's a bag, obviously, and then you have something that you're holding here called the chanter that has the 8 notes, and then you have 3 drones. And the drones are tuned to the there's a low A and a high A, but they're all A. There's 3 notes that are there's A, and there's 2 that are the same, and then this is a higher octave or deeper octave, and so you have to blow to fill up the bag, and so you'll hear them do that. And what ideally, if the bands are doing it well, and I still struggle with this a lot, if they do it well, you see them hit the bag, and that is to get these 3 going. And then they do that for a full measure count, and then they kick in a little bit more and they start playing. If you'll notice, bagpipers don't have music because you can't. Because what you're going to do, tape the music on the back of somebody's back? No. And not only that, but even if you had music in front of them, even if they're a really good sight reader, they couldn't do it. So, and these guys are just standing, which is very appropriate for this song. But if they're marching, you understand that you're now blowing, and when you're not blowing, your arm has to be pushing, because you have to get constant flow through everything. And so that's a big trick of just being able to keep it smooth. So you watch them, and when they're blowing in, their arm is coming up, and when they're getting a breath, and so they do that. So there's that rhythm. And then they're playing. So there's another rhythm. And then they march, and there's another rhythm. And then you watch parades and stuff. They change the beat of the music. So you go from 2/4 to 4/4 to whatever time, maybe fast, maybe slow, but your feet are still marching at the same pace of the people that are in front of you. So rhythm number 1 is here, rhythm number 2 is here, and rhythm number 3 is here. It gets to be incredible. So you dang sure better know the song, because there's no, in other words, you got to have the song well enough that you pretty much play it without even thinking about it. Your brain has to disconnect kind of from what your fingers are doing, because you're doing everything else too. It's fun, but it's incredible. What? Wait, I'm just going to get that. Just here. So I know, I got off on the bagpipes, but I'm just saying, so when he says forever worship you, can I see in my mind that there would be maybe one day in heaven that the bagpipes all play? I don't know. But one of the things that the 200 did as well is that you listen to them. This guy played alone. And then when they all kicked in, because these are called drones, it literally, because I have bees too, it sounded like massive swarms of bees. It's just these are kicking in. And then they started playing the notes together, and it was like, so, sorry about the diversion. But forever worship you. So he took the bread, and he said, this is my body, which is shed for you. And he broke it. He said, this do in remembrance of me. Join me. And he took the cup, and he said, this is my blood, which is shed for you. This is the balm of Gilead. Take in remembrance of me. Would you mind close this up?
Oh. Father God, we thank you. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you, God, for your presence. And God, we thank you for your word for today. God, we thank you that all we need is in you. And so, God, I ask that you touch Dr. Russell, Dr. Jones, and that you refill his cup as he poured out your word to us today. And Father God, as we heard the word, God, let us apply your word to our everyday living. And God, when we leave this place, we know that there's never a place that you're not with us. And in Jesus' name we pray, amen.